Hi, and welcome to my channel. My name is Chad. I appreciate you stopping by. I talk mostly about the Chiefs and the NFL, and we're going to hit on today what the Chiefs could do at the wide receiver position in the first 2 days of the draft, that being rounds 1 through 3. We're going to mainly focus on the X and Z receivers since Rashee Rice was primarily in the slot last season and he did an outstanding job. So guys like Ricky Parcell from Florida or Ladd McConkey out of Georgia will kind of be off the table for the discussion. We also won't speculate on trading up for one of those three top guys like Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze, and Malik Neighbors, since it's going to cost an arm and a leg for the Chiefs to actually trade up into a position to draft one of those guys. The Chiefs have a pick in the first round at pick 32, pick in the second round at pick 64, and a pick in the third round at 95. But as of making this video, that's what they have, and that could clearly change if they can't get L'Jarius Sneed re-signed and they have to trade him away. I personally believe that the Chiefs should draft two receivers in this year's draft because I think their draft class is actually very deep at receiver, and we all know that's a big need for the Chiefs. So let's start off with Troy Franklin from Oregon, a very productive receiver who was at Oregon, had a ton of yards, plenty of catches, tons of touchdowns, had a really good 40 time, the 4.41. You really saw that on tape. The big thing that stood out to you, obviously, on the graphic is the 7 drops. He's also a good size, but those 7 drops are clearly an issue. He did have a ton of targets, though, so drops are going to come with those targets. It's what happens. He was primarily an X receiver at Oregon. He could move around quite a bit. The biggest issue that he had was when he was playing up on the line as the X receiver. If he was pressed by a corner and he would get jammed at the line, then he had real issues with that, mostly because of his frame. He's the 176 is a little small for to be an X receiver. So if he went up against somebody like a L'Jarius Sneed would pretty much take him out completely if they're playing. I think what will happen is he'll transition better into being a Z receiver to kind of just stretch the field. He was not just a deep threat, but he was very good at stretching the field and being that deep threat. You'll see him, probably be a little bit more of a gadget guy too. He'll come around on the sweeps and stuff as well. And he will probably play in the slot some when he hits the NFL as well. But if he were to be drafted by the Chiefs, I would project him to be more of that deep threat guy. I could see him potentially being an X receiver at some point, but if he's going to do that, he's going to have to put on some weight because the 176 frame is not going to work for being an X receiver. Next up, we have Adonai Mitchell out of Texas. I think he's one of the better receivers in the draft. He's one of my favorite targets for the Chiefs at the end of that first round if they were going to go with the receiver there. He's got really good size of the 6'2", 205. He's very young at 21. Not a whole lot of production compared to Troy Franklin, but the Texas offense wasn't as high flying as the Oregon offense. The one nice thing is he had really good hands, not a whole lot of drops, just the one drop. Blazing 40 time for his size at the 4.34. That's something that was really impressive. I saw that on tape for sure. He's a very versatile receiver. He'll go and he'll do everything. He primarily played the X for Texas, but he can do whatever. He has no problem going over the middle of the field and making catches there. He's not scared of that. He's got outstanding hands. And I think that he's something that the Chiefs have been missing since Dwayne Bowe, in my opinion. He's not just a possession receiver, but he also has the speed to do other things. The one really impressive thing that I thought that he had was when he was getting out of his break in his route, he had some really awesome moves just to create that separation between him and the cornerback. Now we have Keon Coleman coming up. He's a huge receiver out of Florida State, 6'3", 213 pounds. He played at that weight. His 40 time is what jumped off to me with the combine. It seemed pretty low for what I saw on tape. The 4.61 was not what I saw when I was watching him. But he is somebody that is a really big receiver. He's a 50-50 ball monster. He boxes guys out like he's playing basketball. He has a huge catch radius, and he has no problem with contested catches. He's a strict possession receiver guy. He'll come in and he'll definitely be an X receiver right away. He'll be a huge red zone threat. He was at Florida State. Even if he doesn't see a ton of playing time, for some reason, if he gets in the NFL, because he might be a little bit of a project, you're going to see him in the red zone, and they're just going to throw the ball up to him, and he's going to win more often than he's not. He also returned punts at FSU, which is a little added thing with him, but his pure athleticism and size and the way he can just go up and get a ball is what's going to get this guy drafted. Let's move on to Jalen Polk now. He was one of those three guys out of Washington that's that part of that trio of the high flying Huskies offense. He was the second option to Rome Odunze, who's going to be about a top 10 pick in this draft, in my opinion. He had some really good production at that second receiver spot. He was mostly a deep threat, but he could do a few other things. He wasn't asked to do a whole lot at Washington. He's also not the most athletic guy on the team for sure, or in the draft that you're going to see. His 40 time at the 4.52 is about correct. I think he may have played a little faster than that from what I saw. What he relies on really is his savvy route running and his positioning to get open. He does do a really good job of finding holes in the zone, and he makes some really spectacular catches at times. He's got very good concentration, and he's a hands catcher, and he really only uses his body when he needs to actually make the catch. He's going to have to expand his route tree when he gets to the NFL, and I think he'll mostly just be a Z or slot receiver because, like I said, at Washington, they didn't ask him to do a whole lot. Next up, we've got the big man, Xavier Legette out of South Carolina. He was one of my favorite guys that I was watching when I was looking at tape. He had a lot of production at South Carolina, but the thing that stands out to you is not only his size, but his speed. You're in a 4.39 at the 40. He's a huge receiver. He kind of reminds me of a little smaller DK Metcalf. He's just a freak athlete, and he mostly played the X receiver position, and it was like a possession receiver, but also could go deep. He was really versatile. They moved him around quite a bit. They put him in the slot, even went into the backfield. The thing that stood out to me was he was always in a really good position to catch the ball, and he owned 50-50 balls better than anybody else. He's another guy that probably needs to expand his route tree a bit, but he's going to come in right away and be a starting X receiver. Like I said, I'm really high on the Chiefs drafting this guy, not just because of his size and his speed, but also just the ability for them to throw a ball up to him, and he's going to go and get it. That's something that the Chiefs have been missing for a while. Now let's talk about the fastest man to ever run the 40 at the Combine, being Xavier Worthy from Texas. He was a really productive receiver at Texas, not a high-flying offense, kind of like an Oregon or Washington, but he put up some really good numbers. He had some issues with drops a little bit, but those drop numbers went down from 2022 to 2023. In 2022, he actually had 10 drops. Last year, he had 5. The thing that obviously sets him apart from everybody else is his speed. At the 4.21 is what he ran at the Combine, which is extremely impressive, obviously. I think if he gets drafted by the Chiefs, he will most likely just be a deep threat guy. Sometimes you'll probably utilize him on some end arounds of screens and stuff like that, maybe kind of like a Mecole Hardman. But no matter where he gets drafted, I think the thing that's going to have to happen is he's going to have to put on some weight. I just don't know how you can play in the NFL at 165 pounds. I feel like if you take one big hit from somebody, one of these big safeties or linebackers, then you're just done for. But no matter where he goes, in my opinion, he's going to have to put on some weight. Now we have one of my favorite guys in the draft is actually Jamari Thrash from Louisville. He's got some pretty good size to him. He was fairly productive at Louisville. The one thing that kind of jumps out to you are the 7 drops. He definitely had some concentration drops, and as Chiefs fans, that kind of gives us some nightmares. But when I watch him, it's hard not to see him as a Chief. If you go and watch his tape, he had a pretty respectable 40-yard dash time. The 4.46 is pretty good, but he reminds me a little bit of Tyreek Hill, not in the fact that he's fast like Tyreek Hill, but he's quick. He gets to his top speed very quick, and which makes him really good in those short to intermediate routes, which is how Louisville predominantly used him. He's very good at breaking tackles, and he's yards after the catch machine. The one nice thing about him, too, is he's a really versatile receiver. I think he could easily play the X position, but if he needed to, he could move around quite a bit also. And the Chiefs, they do love versatility. And he could even be a gadget guy on the end arounds and stuff. He did that at Louisville. So I think he's one of the better fits for the Chiefs, in my opinion, even though with the drops and stuff. But if you go watch his tape, I definitely recommend watching it. And you will see right away that, yeah, he reminds me makes me think of the Chiefs when I watch him. Next up, we have the son of the great Jerry Rice. That's Brendan Rice out of USC. He's got a really nice frame to be an X receiver. I project him to be more of a deep threat guy. He didn't have a really large route tree when he was playing for USC. He had some pretty good productivity, nothing crazy, but the one drop really makes you happy when you see that. He has a really good stutter move and hesitation, which helps him get open right away. And he never really quits on any plays, which you really can't quit on a play if you're playing with Caleb Williams. He moves around so much, which also transitions really well with Patrick Mahomes, who kind of does a similar thing. If I were to say the Chiefs to draft him, he'll strictly kind of just be an MVS replacement that may not even do as much. He will most likely just be a deep threat and probably some wide receiver screens. The one cool thing would be is that he is Jerry Rice's son, and we'd have two Rices on our team, so that would be kind of cool. Next up, we've got Malachi Corley out of Western Kentucky, somebody who had a lot of productivity when he was in college. This year, he had some really good productivity, but he was with Western Kentucky for 3 years, and he was the primary target for Western Kentucky's offense for those 3 years. So he has plenty of experience. Not a whole lot of drops. He didn't run a 40. He was a late scratch from the combine for an unknown reason, so not really sure what happened there. He was someone that the Hilltoppers tried to get the ball to really quickly and let him just kind of be a yak machine. He's super versatile. I could definitely see the Chiefs drafting him a lot for his versatility. One of the biggest parts of his game is his ability to break tackles for those yards after the catch. He's also a really fast receiver on tape. I know we didn't see his 40, but he's kind of like one of those guys similar to a Jamari Thrash, where if you got him the ball pretty quickly, then you're going to see a lot of production with him. He's kind of similar with Rashee Rice. A lot of teams now play the Chiefs with a two safety shell, and they don't to try to take away those deep passes. So now the Chiefs have kind of been forced to take those short to intermediate throws, and I think someone like a Malachi Corley could definitely fit that. Last but not least is Javon Baker out of UCF. Another really good-sized receiver with a lot of production in college. It says 7 drops. He had 14 in the last 2 seasons. I couldn't really see what the drops were for this particular season, so I just kind of split the difference. So take that with a grain of salt. But I do know that he has some concentration drops for sure, which is a little odd because he has some really good playmaking ability. That was what really stands out when you watch his tape. He has some outstanding catches, but he has some really easy drops. So I think if the Chiefs were to draft him, he will most likely just be a deep threat receiver. He could also play probably some in the slot as well, but I just expect him mostly to be a Z receiver. So tell me, what do you think? What receiver that I listed did you like? Is there another receiver that you wanted to add to that list? Do you think the Chiefs should draft 2 receivers in this really deep receiver draft like I do? And where do you see the Chiefs drafting a receiver? Also, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, and also leave a like, which greatly helps me reach more Chiefs fans just like yourself. And as always, thank you for taking the time for giving me a listen.